Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're going to be reviewing Depois du film by Bacamarte.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
So get ready because this Brazilian band has a lot of favorite bits that I personally really liked. So without further ado, here are some of my favorite bits from this album. So this is Depois du film. The album was released back in 1983 by the Brazilian band Bacamarte. Now, not only is this the first Brazilian band we're looking at on this list, this is also the first South American band we're listening to on here. Now, I'm not a knowledgeable person when it comes to knowing progressive music from around the world, and that's exactly one of the reasons I'm doing this list. When making the list, I actually made sure that I at least have a few albums from each continent, so hopefully that is what it is. But I do know to say that progressive rock as a whole, it's a genre very much associated with North America, being Canada and the United States, and of course Europe. And getting to listen to progressive music from other parts of the world is always a treat. Now, as I said, this album was released back in 1983. Now, you would know that back in the 80s, most progressive rock bands, which were mainstream at the time, moved towards a more 80s sound, more pop, more synth-driven sound. But as it seems, Bacamarte, maybe they were not up to date with things, but they decided to create a lovely symphonic prog album, which is very akin to what most of the prog bands did back in the 70s, only Bacamarte was kinda late to the party. But the type of symphonic prog that Bacamarte produced on this album, although being very unmistakably progressive, it still has very odd notes and features that you don't find in Western progressive music, and I can only associate that with their traditional norms and their influences from their own native country. And if I had to somewhat try and describe to you what the music on here sounds like if you don't know this album already, it kinda sounds like the music of Red Queen to Griffin 3, but it just doesn't. So yeah, I'm being very helpful. Just go ahead, give this album a listen. Honestly, there's no way I can describe this amazing sound to you. And this band has a 7-man ensemble of most of them which are not known players around the world, but if I had to talk about them, I'd say that there are two that are most prominent which I should really address. So firstly, we have the band's leader and guitarist Mario Nedo. Now, of course, each and every member of the band is very talented, very virtuous, and brings their own style into the music, but Mario itself is undeniably bringing a whole lot more. Mario and his guitars is just fantastic. It's a sound which I've never heard anything like it before, and he's so good at it. I think the thing I like about it the most is just him being so innovative. I think there is not a single track which my jaw didn't drop drop on when listening to the way that he plays the guitar. It always seems like he has a new surprise up his sleeve he's just waiting to unleash upon my unaccustomed ears. And when it comes down to it, I think that the most he brings into the music is really the emotion and the colors in the way that he plays. It's really so lovely to hear him playing. I can honestly just have a playlist of him with a guitar alone for multiple hours and I'd be hooked. Now, the second player, or should I say vocalist, that really leaves a mark on this album has to be the lead vocalist, Jane Dubach. She appears on 4 tracks out of the 8 in total that there are on this album, and every time she sings in this lovely Portuguese, her lyrics flow like water in the crevices of the melody. I am being very poetical, but that is because it really is. She sings very lovely. If I had to compare her own sound to something else that I know, I'd say that she really sounds like a very South American Hanny Elston from Renaissance. And if I had to compare Mario Nedo, I'd say that he sounds a lot like Steve Howe, but again with very South American influences. But honestly, leaving the analytical point of view for a moment in order to talk more personally about this album, I'd have to say that this one really took me by surprise. Like, what are the odds that the only Brazilian album on this list would end up being so good? But apparently it is. Maybe that's the reason it is on this list, just because it really is that good. I can only assume that progressive rock wasn't such a big genre in South America at the time, and it really is a privilege of the West in some way, but seeing what has come out of the prog scene in South America and Brazil in particular, at least in this album, really amazed me all the more. The music of Depois do Film is really all that I want in my progressive music, and I enjoyed it so much. It's just 38 minutes of brilliant ecstasy of lovely sounds. Now, is this album perfect? Well, I don't know. I really enjoyed it. I listened to it a couple of times now. I really like it all that much, but I don't quite know if it is capable of being perfection. But I'll get to all of that in a second. Firstly, let's talk about the cover. Now, this cover is pretty lovely, although it is quite simple when it comes to technical forms and the way that it's drawn. I think the more you can explore about this cover actually comes with the conceptual idea of it. Now, the name Depois do Film, translated from Portuguese, basically means after the end, and I think when looking at this cover I can sorta get why it is. So what we see on this cover is a man, presumably Moses, writing the 10 commandments on the 2 slabs of stone, and next to him stands a woman and she seems to be pregnant. And if I had to personally guess, I think that this imagery represents the arrival of the next generation after some sort of a world-ending scenario or an apocalypse, if you might say. And in order for that next generation, the new generation that comes after the end, to succeed, they have to have a set of ground rules, which are the commandments being written. I don't know, am I taking this too far? I actually don't know, it's just what it seems to me, but honestly this cover is pretty simple for the fantastic album and very complex album that it represents. And maybe if I had taken the liberty to actually translate the lyrics and read them, maybe I'd find more information, but I didn't. I enjoyed it for what it is, and honestly it was pretty enough for me. So when it comes to the rating of this album, I actually don't know. I'm at a crossroads when it comes to it. Of course, my dilemma is between giving it a 9 or giving it a 10. And you know, 6 out of the 8 tracks on here did actually receive a 10 out of 10 rating, which would mean this album is a 10 out of 10 album. But the thing is, I kind of have to interject my own personal thoughts inside of there and really stay true to myself. And you know, when I give an album a 10 out of 10 rating, I do know that I have some sort of slight obsession with it in some way. So if I give an album a 9, I know that it's really good and I really like it, but I don't really feel the urge to listen to it again right away. And when I give an album a 10 out of 10, it's usually an album when I just finished listening to it and I want to hit the replay button. And you know, I gave this album a listen at least 2 more times, and honestly, I don't think that this is the case. So as said, when there's doubt, there's no doubt. Thus, this album will receive a very high 9 out of 10. But that's about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for tomorrow because we're going to be listening to Untitled by Agusa. And again, I want to thank my supporters over on Patreon, so thank you Clay Walnum and Brian for being very amazing. And that's all for today. Have a wonderful day and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye guys.